And welcome back here to Live Now from Fox. I'm Andrew Kraft. Thanks for being with us on this very busy Wednesday. We want to focus our efforts now on some key international headlines. If you were following our coverage yesterday, wasn't a good day to be a member of an Iranian proxy terror group. Fox News foreign affairs correspondent Trey Yingst has the rundown and the lowdown of these key losses. Both Hamas and Hezbollah have dealt a devastating blow just in the course of one day's time. Here's Trey's report.
Tuesday afternoon, the leader of Hamas, Ismail Haniyeh, met with Iran's supreme leader and the country's new president. Hours later, he was dead. A missile striking the compound where Haniyeh stayed in the Iranian capital of Tehran.
The cause and dimensions of this incident are under investigation, and the results will be announced subsequently.
Iran's supreme leader has vowed revenge for the strike, raising the possibility of a direct attack against Israel that could spark a broader war. Tonight, in an address to the nation, Israel's prime minister vowed to continue going after his country's enemies, saying that Israel hit Iran and its proxies on 3 different fronts over the past several days, but stopped short of taking credit for the Iran strike.
There are challenging days ahead of us. Since the attack in Beirut, threats have been heard from all sides. We are prepared for any scenario and will stand united and determined against any threat.
The killing in Iran came hours after an Israeli airstrike killed a top Hezbollah commander in the suburbs of Beirut. The strike marked the first time since the current war began that Israeli jets targeted Hezbollah in the Lebanese capital. Despite the 2 offensive actions overnight, American officials remain hopeful that a ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas can be completed.
It's profoundly in the interest of trying to put things on a better path, not only in Gaza, but actually throughout the region, because so much is tied to what's happening in Gaza right now.
The UN Security Council held an emergency meeting today to discuss the strikes overnight. This gathering came at Iran's request. In Tel Aviv, Trey Yingst, Fox News.
Trey, thanks so much. In the meantime here, we do want to bring into the conversation some of our friends to help us make sense of this major international headline. And that, of course, is national security analyst and expert Hal Kempfer and analyst there at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, Abdul-Hussain. Gentlemen, thanks for being with us tonight. I'm going to pose this first question to both of you. Hal first. Hal, what is Iran going to do in response to this? You can make the argument, and many have, that because Haniyeh was taken out in Tehran, assassinated, that this is a failure of the Iranian security apparatus in a sense that they would be quite deeply humiliated by such an oversight on their part when it comes to security. So Hal, how is Iran going to respond? Are they going to strike Israel directly?
Andrew, that's a great question, and everyone is trying to figure that out right now. Obviously, the Khamenei, the supreme leader, his first response was rather visceral in terms of striking back at Israel, which is not surprising. However, if you look at where Khamenei is, he knows that if he does that, that could have some pretty dire repercussions for Iran. So they might try to do something. They might try to launch some missiles. Certainly, they're probably going to use their proxies as much as possible. U.S. bases have come under attack. That was actually happening before this took place. So we might see more of that. But there's a little bit of introspection there. Although I will say this is incredibly embarrassing for Iran because basically he was their guest, and according to one report, he actually hit that house he was staying in was part of the presidential compound. So not only did they hit him and take out him and his bodyguard, they actually hit a building on the presidential compound in Tehran. Rather amazing.
So, Hussein, I'm going to pose the same question to you because the New York Times is reporting that Iran, in some capacity, intends to strike at Israel directly. Now, from what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, Israel has not claimed responsibility for this targeted strike there in Tehran. But does all evidence point to the fact that Israel very well likely did this? Are Israeli fingerprints all over this? Or do we just have to wait for Israeli confirmation? Hussein? And Hussein, I think you might be muted there.
I'm sorry. it doesn't matter whether Israel claims it or not. What matters is that whether what Khamenei says and what Iran believes. So as long as Iran says that Israel has done it, so I think they'll design their reaction in such a way to go after the Jewish state. Now, will Iran do it as a country like we saw on April 14, country to country, or will Iran revert to its proxies? I think the reason why Iran designed these proxies was that they fight and Iran sits back and watch. If I were Khamenei, I'd be more worried about this infiltration that Israel or whoever killed Haniya could manage to get. I'd be worried about the next personality that might be taken out inside Tehran, rather than going into a theatrical attack like the one that they staged on April 14.
Okay, so Hal, for the sake of argumentation, the hypothetical, if Israel did do this, what does that say about their capabilities, about their intelligence gathering? If they could have pulled something like this off, how good are they, so to speak?
I have to say, assuming this is Israel and there's nobody else that's on the board that we can think of that could do this, it is a phenomenal strike. I mean, they literally got into the heart of Iran, into Tehran. They hit a secured compound. And when you look at it, they've done a number of different things. They have, there's been reported Mossad operations, which are direct action, where they could have used a smaller drone type device. But everything coming out on this, it sounds like it was a sizable missile, something that could have been fired from a rather sizable drone, or possibly even a strike aircraft is possible. So when you look at what happened there, that's amazing. And then in that sort of targeting, that you hit somebody, taking out a high value target like that in the right place at the right time, very difficult, which says they had some very, very accurate, timely intelligence, whether that was human or technical or a bit of both, where they were actually able to put that missile into that building, into that room, to take out that target exactly the right time. It's got to make everybody in Tehran nervous. It's got to make everybody in the Middle East nervous. They're able to pull that off. And then, of course, they did that right after they pulled off the strike in Beirut.
Sure.
So that it basically, from a tactical, strategic, operational standpoint, I think Israel has impressed everybody, however angry they may be, has impressed everybody with their capabilities.
Yeah, I want to put this tweet up too, and from Josh Breslow there, my colleague, quoting the New York Times report saying Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, has issued an order for Iran to strike Israel directly after the Hamas leader, Ismail Haniyeh, killed there in Tehran. Hussein, I want to ask you this. Is Hamas, the group itself, politically and militarily fundamentally altered, different after this? From my understanding, Haniyeh was somewhat like Hamas's Secretary of State or foreign diplomat. He had a lot of relations and sources with other countries, Turkey, Iran, Russia. Of course, he was in Iran attending the presidential inauguration when he was taken out here. What does his absence mean? Is there someone waiting in the wings to fill that void or not? Is Hamas going to be downgraded completely by this absence?
Well, in terms of military operation and capabilities, he's never been this guy who was involved in these kind of decisions or operations. He's been the figurehead kind of person. In the past, he used to live in Gaza, and for a period of time, he served as the elected prime minister of Hamas inside of Gaza. But then he left and things changed, and he became just a figurehead, mostly living in Doha, and just saying all kinds of stuff in support of Hamas. From time to time, he is used as a link, as a connection between whoever is negotiating with the Israelis and Hamas. So, they talked, Israel talks to the Egyptians talk to Haniyeh. Haniyeh takes the message to Sinwar, and even then, he can't guarantee the time of the response. He can't guarantee what Sinwar is saying. So what I say is that this is a huge moral victory to Israel. This puts every Hamas person, whether military or not, on notice, and that's pretty much it. It's huge, but in terms of military capabilities or effect on the ground, I don't think it'll have much of that.
Okay, I only asked that question because Hania was the lead negotiator, or at least mediator, from the Qatari and Egyptian standpoint. The Qataris and the Egyptians would go to Hania, and to your point, Hussein, Hania would then go to Sinwar or communicate to Sinwar indirectly or directly about the status of ceasefire negotiations. Without that link in the chain there, is the ceasefire deal dead on arrival? Hal, to you, I mean, how does this impact the ceasefire negotiations? The State Department said today it is insisting the deal can still get done in the wake of this assassination here. But if you don't have that element, if you have that missing piece from Hamas as a key interlocutor between the intermediaries, then what?
Well, you know, that's one of the big discussions that's been going on. And actually, reports are that basically he had kind of thrown a monkey wrench in the before he left to go to down to Iran, and it kind of stalled out some of the progress on the negotiations. And I don't know if that had anything to do with the timing of the attack or anything along those lines, but it could be that in the negotiations he might have become an obstacle as well, beyond his status and beyond, you know, the fact that he is, you know, this nominal figurehead in charge of Hamas. He may have actually become a really impediment towards getting anything done. That could have been part of the calculation on why that happened when it happened.
Okay.
And I can't rule that out. Everyone is kind of saying, basically, don't hold your breath on the ceasefire negotiations bearing fruit anytime soon, because certainly this has thrown the whole Hamas delegation in Qatar into a bit of disarray. And I would say probably shock is probably a better term.
Yeah. Hussein, you wanted to get in there on that question. What do you have to say about that?
Sure. Well, first of all, he was not the only one who was the link between Sinwar and the outside world. There was also Khalid Mish'al, to start with, in Doha, who has a similar figurehead status. And we know that the Egyptian intelligence service also has direct links to Hamas. So whenever there are talks, it doesn't go through really one person. It has so many channels. The decision, however, on the Hamas side, inside of Gaza, is just with one person, who's Sinwar. But getting to Sinwar, there are many avenues that can lead us to him.
Okay, but you know, if you're Sinwar and wherever you are, if you're hiding out in a tunnel or bunker somewhere in Gaza, and you get this news, I mean, what goes through your mind about the overall prosecution of the war from that standpoint? We also know that our defense Secretary Lloyd Austin spoke on the phone with the Israeli Defense Minister Gallant today about Israel's response to the Lebanese Hezbollah July 27th attack on Israel there in the Golan Heights, which killed 12 innocent civilians, mostly children. They discussed the threats to Israel posed by a range of Iranian-backed terrorist groups, including Lebanese Hezbollah. Secretary Austin reaffirmed his unwavering commitment to Israel's security and right to self-defense. Back to my previous question and then this new question, Hal, is it weird to you that the West, Israel, the United States, the Europeans, they're pretty quiet about this, what happened in Tehran? Why?
Well, I don't think there's anything they can really say. I think what was said was that we're reaffirming our commitment to defend Israel. That tells Iran right off, and they remember what they did, firing 300 drones and missiles, 300 plus drones and missiles at Israel, how poorly that turned out for them. And it was actually kind of embarrassing for them because it had very little effect on the ground. Hearing what was said by Secretary Austin kind of reaffirms that the U.S. would weigh in that defensive mode again, should they decide to do that. Now, as far as what goes through Yahya Sinwar's head right now, if he's in a tunnel, he's got to be looking up and kind of wondering.
Okay.
The timing of this has got to be making him feel very insecure. And frankly, maybe the reason he was that you saw the strike in Tehran is maybe they are zeroing in on where Sinwar is in the Gaza Strip. And you got to remember, Sinwar is in no protected status. If they can find where he is, they're going to take him out immediately, and they're going to use all the force necessary to do so. So I would imagine he's feeling a little less secure than he was, say, 2 days ago.
You know, I want to put this tweet up here from Barack Ravid there at Axios. He said, Secretary of State Blinken in his reporting says the U.S. was unaware and not involved in the assassination of Hamas leader Hania. Hussein, lastly to you, Hal and I talk so much about this war and about key moments and inflection points on whether or not something like this can turn the tide of the war. Will we, a month from now, 6 months from now, depending on if the war is still going on, look back to this moment to see that maybe the tide of it had changed? Or is it a one-off situation here? What do you think about that question?
Well, I think if I were Sinwar, the lesson from Hania's assassination would be that Israel is dead serious about total victory. I mean, if Israel is jumping through hoops to get a figurehead like Hania in Tehran, then, you know, Israel is serious about that. And that tells me that whatever he had in mind in terms of a ceasefire or temporary one or a longer term one, none of those is coming. So I'd be scared that the Israelis are taking this to the end, and there's no middle ground for this.
All right, we're going to have to leave it at that. Hal Kempfer, Hussein Abdul-Hussain, thanks so much for your time and your insight. We'll talk soon.